few days ago, I had this thing that happens pretty regularly where I wake up at like 3 a.m. and that's when my brain just starts fucking going crazy and throwing all these different things at me, all this shit that needs to be done. And then I start getting stressed and it's hard to fall asleep. And so I didn't get a whole lot of sleep that night. And the next day I was up early and I was getting prepared, getting a bunch of work prepared for that day. And I was still stressing out and I was kind of, let's see, what was I doing? I was sort of dwelling in not being where I want to be kind of a scenario. And this concept came to mind and it actually really helped instantly once I remembered this. And the concept, the idea is that regardless of where you are in life, it's very possible that you are in a place where somebody else is dreaming of being. So when I'm sitting here stressing about my business, and it's kind of it's part of entrepreneurship for a lot of people. I would say probably most people is that if you're really committed to growing your business, you're always going to be in this state of not where you want to be. And for the most part, that's a good thing, because if you're where you want to be, then then what? You just fucking stay there. You don't grow, you don't push yourself. And like, you can kind of apply this to probably anything if you think about it. So, I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, let's talk about it in the sense of graffiti, and then I'll kind of elaborate on the whole idea. But if you reached a point where you're like, okay, I'm totally satisfied with what my graph is, and this is just what I'm going to do. I wonder if that would I guess it wouldn't get boring for some people, because you do see people that are still doing the same shit for decades, but we still like seeing it. It's sort of like, it's almost like, if you went and saw, your favorite band from fucking way back in the day and they only played the new shit, you'd probably be disappointed. So we want to see the hits, so to speak. We want to see those old styles. And I come to think of it, if anybody knows me, that seems to be what they want to see from me too. People are always, I'll bring back the old shit. And I'm like, kind of don't really want to do that, but maybe I should. I'm getting a little off track here. So in business, you're always not satisfied. Well, not everybody, but I would say most of us, every entrepreneur that I know is like that, is you're constantly not satisfied with your position. So in my state of kind of stressed out and being a little hard on myself, that concept just popped into my mind, because I've had people tell me, they're like, oh man, I want to be where you're at someday. And I'm like, really? Like, God, I want to be so much further along. And that shit just goes right over my head. But it's important to think about how big of a deal that is. So let's talk about that for a second. Even though I'm not happy with my business, there's people that would love to have a business like what I have. Not that my business is this great, big, huge, crazy thing, because it isn't, but we are much further along. Like, this is the business I never thought I would have. If you asked me in 2019, would you have all these printers? And like in 2019, I think 2019 is around when we started buying printing equipment. So pre that time, I was printing everything by hand. If you said, hey, in a few short years, you're going to have, what do we have? 5 printers, fucking, 6 cutters and 2 laminators, and we got another machine on the way. I would have been like, no way. We're not going to have all that shit. There's no way. So I'm where I would have wanted to be back then, even though I'm not where I want to be. I hope this isn't getting too fucking rambly. Let me try to get focused. It's a little late. I'm trying to get this done. So let me reel myself back in a little bit. Quick recap. The idea is, no matter where you are in life, you're possibly somebody's goal outcome. So that's where I wanted to go. In my business, I have been told by people that are, still solo solo entrepreneurs and maybe working out of their house or stuff like that. And they're like, I want to have what you have someday. So even if I'm sitting here not satisfied, there's some comfort to think about that you're actually in a position where somebody's goal outcome, or, you know what I'm saying? So then I got me thinking about some other shit. Like, what about the person that doesn't have a business, or, maybe a person that's unemployed and they're barely even making their bills, or they're living a life where they think like, there's no way that's somebody's goal outcome. And I thought about that, and I thought, if you're in America, and even if you're living in the projects, there's people that would love that life. You know what I mean? That's a better life than a lot of people on this planet. Like, I can't remember the statistics, but it's like the poorest people in America. I don't even know if this is true. I heard it. Maybe look it up. I'll look it up after this. I should have looked it up before this, but I'm just winging it, so I didn't even think about this. But something about like the poorest people in America are still above like a shitload of other people in the world. And that makes sense. There's people that live in third world countries that are getting bombed and all this kind of shit happening. And it's like, you got to understand that where you're at is where somebody else would love to be. And I remember I read that in a book too. Somebody was saying like, when you're stuck in traffic, there's somebody that's in a country that's experiencing these huge, massive issues. They would love to trade places with you. They would love to be sitting in traffic and not being at risk of having their whole family fucking blown up by people that don't like them just because of their religion or their ethnicity or whatever that is. There's a lot of people that are dealing with way worse shit than us. So I'm sitting here beating myself up over not being in a position that I want to be. And it's like, when you really think about it in that perspective, it's like, fuck, man, you should be grateful for what you have. It's good to be not satisfied to a certain extent, I think, because that's what motivates most of us to keep moving forward. If you ever reach that point where you're just satisfied, I don't know if that seems like it would get really boring really fast. So there was something else I wanted to mention on this, but I can't remember. Oh yeah, there was something else I read in a book, and I can't remember exactly the whole shit. And somebody was talking about, they were doing a speech at some event, and he planned out his whole speech ahead of time. So he was already locked into what he was going to say. He rehearsed it. He was ready to go. And the guy that went up before him pretty much said the opposite of what he was going to say. So he had this really uncomfortable moment. So the guy before him was saying, like, he was telling everybody in the audience, like, never be satisfied, never be happy with where you're at, and all this stuff. And he was just really pushing that concept. And then the next guy goes up, and it was pretty much saying, keep pushing to grow, but find a way to be happy with where you're at. So it was almost like the opposite. And I guess the guy was pissed at him backstage. But then he said that the guy ended up checking himself into the hospital because he had like a mental breakdown. And I sort of wonder about that. It's like, I heard this phrase, I think it's Ed Milet that said it, blissfully dissatisfied. I don't know. I think that phrase is kind of weird, but it makes sense. You should be happy with where you're at, but not be satisfied. I think there's something to be said about that. And that's where I think I'm kind of missing. I tend to be missing the point a lot of times, because we just hit this milestone. It's a financial milestone that I was just like, oh, that's the first big one that everybody wants. It is what it is, And one of my team members was like, hey, we just made it. And she pulled up the numbers, and I was like, oh, cool. And I'm like, shouldn't I be fucking happy? Like, what the fuck, man? What's wrong with me? Anyway, that's it. I don't know. Just kind of winged it. Just a quick recap of this very quick episode. No matter where you are in life, no matter how dissatisfied you are, there's probably somebody out there that's aspiring to be where you're at, or would trade places with you in a second. So what I'm trying to do is continue to not be satisfied, and continue to keep pushing forward, and continue to want to grow in all areas of my life, from my business to my health, my fitness, mental health, every aspect of my life, pushing towards excellence, pushing towards being the absolute best version of myself that I can be. But at the same time, I need to find a way to at least celebrate these little milestones. So that's all I got. I hope it was helpful, and I will see you soon. All right.
Appreciate each and every one of you guys who are supporting the cause and continue to spread the love. And yeah, stay up.